Amen. So, are women above the law? I just read an article, and it had me a little spun up earlier, and I'm glad I waited to film this video. But you know, the feminists and maybe even some women who don't describe themselves as feminists portray women as this oppressed minority that needs all these protections, and it is being preyed upon by evil men. I read an article, and I don't remember all the names, and I probably wouldn't use them if I did, but it happened in Arizona. And this woman, she's a 38-year-old lawyer, had a form of cancer. I can't remember which kind of cancer it was. And she preserved some of her eggs to be able to have children later. She was like 36 at this point, too, by the way. She's in her mid-30s. It's a little late to be thinking about preserving your fertility. And so she approached her boyfriend and asked him to provide the sperm so they could make some embryos so they could implant them later if she wanted to have children. And the clinic that they went to made them sign an agreement that said that if they broke up or became divorced, the embryos could not, let's say babies, that's what they are, could not be used without both people's consent. So of course, after this they get married and divorced in the space of 2 years. Now she's 38. And she's decided she wants to use these embryos that she had frozen. And her ex-husband now is, of course, very reticent for her to make these children, to bring these children to term. Which, what do you do with them now? You leave them frozen? You make these ethically weird decisions because of your own wants and desires, and now suddenly you have these problems. But he doesn't want these children to be implanted and come to fruition. So she takes them to court because the fertility clinic won't do it without his permission, because that was the agreement they signed. That was the contract they signed. So they go to court, and what does the stupid court do? The stupid court says, oh, no, she's got the right to make these children. Now, don't get me wrong. I want these children to be brought into this world, but this woman was able to flout contract law. A contract. She was able to say, nah, I don't want to do it that way. And the court said, no, you don't have to. And in its decision, the court realized or recognized or admitted that, yeah, this man now was probably going to be on the hook for child support for these children that he should have never made to begin with, but in his mind weren't the whole situation is stupid. Stupid people have stupid problems. But let's just ignore the ethical situation of these children right now, which is very difficult for me to do because it's so wrapped up in abortion and in our whole ideology here about children and large families. But for just a second, let's ignore the tragedy that's happening to these children and look at this just from the standpoint of this man and this woman and this court and this contract. This woman signed her name to an agreement, a binding agreement, and when she was no longer wanted to abide by that agreement, she just ripped it up and threw it out. And the court said, of course you can do this, because why? Because you're a woman. That's the only reason she was allowed to do this. If it was going the other way, if this man wanted to use these embryos to implant in his new life, oh my God. Think about the outrage. Think about if you switched this up. Think about if this man said, no, I want my sperm, my children I made with my sperm, and I want to raise children. The outcry, the hue and cry would be heard from one end of the continent to the other. But when this woman wants to do it, then suddenly, oh, it's perfectly okay. It's her fertility. These libs, they have this cult. They have this sick fascination with women's fertility, using women to destroy their own fertility. This woman, when she went to do this, her boyfriend first said no, and she threatened to go to an ex-boyfriend and get him to do it. And that's when the current boyfriend said yes. And you know what, let's just take a moment to blame the victim. This guy is an idiot. This guy is a moron. When that woman said, oh, if you won't give me children, I'll go to my, not even children, they weren't even married, they were just dating, I'll go to my ex-boyfriend and get him to do it. That should have been, if he missed all the red flags up to this point, that should have been a glaring waving red flag that this was I hate the term toxic because it's so banal, but this was a terrible person. But no, in order to keep her in his life, in order to please her, he went and did it anyway, and he's an idiot. He's a moron. Let's get that out of the way. This is a weak-minded, weak-willed man. who did something he knew he shouldn't have. Be that as it may, I couldn't get out of a cell phone contract like this. I couldn't go say, I just don't want to be in this cell phone contract, and have the court say, yeah, sure, go ahead. But because it was a woman, and it was fertility, and it was going against a man, they did it. Young men, even old men. I have, when we first started our channel, our first 3 videos were about MGTOW. This thing blew my mind. MGTOW, I couldn't wrap my mind around it. I do now. I get it. I mean, I don't subscribe to it myself, obviously, but I understand why young men and old men are saying, no, we don't want this anymore. I'm sorry, we had a technical difficulty in full-throated roar there. And if I remember correctly, I was talking about that silly little girl in Maryland who didn't like her uncle's politics and called the cops and said, oh, he's dangerous. And then the cops kicked in his front door and he defended his home and he got killed. I'm sure the left would say, oh, obviously he was dangerous, but he wasn't bothering anybody until they kicked in his front door. I met a man one time, and I believe his story, and I won't go into all the details why, but I have verified the main points of this story. His wife attacked him. I don't think it was his wife. I think it was his girlfriend. She attacked him. She'd been throwing pots at him, and when she ran out of pots, she attacked him and was pummeling him with her fist. Not that I don't know. It doesn't matter if she was hurting him or not. And he grabbed her fist and held her fist. He didn't shake her. He didn't throw her. He didn't hold her down. He held her fist. And when she pulled away, he let her go. But he did hold her fist for several minutes while she was trying to punch him. He got convicted of family violence. And he was in a family violence class with me, which probably tells you more about me than you wanted to know. But I'm ashamed of some of the things I've done, but I'm not ashamed of all of them. I'm not too ashamed of the things that ended me up in that class. I decided it was for some of the things I was ashamed of. But be that as it may, if you are under any, now I'm not MGTOW, the whole men going their own way and eschewing women, I understand why they do, but I think they've made a mistake about the fun. Now, I mean, you could be celibate. There's nothing wrong with being celibate. If you just say, I don't want to mess with a woman, I'm going to be celibate, or vice versa, there's nothing wrong with that. Jesus was celibate. Paul was celibate. Lots of great religious figures were celibate. My point being, I think this was my point, you at least have to recognize going in that women are above the law, or at least the law does not apply to you the way it applies to them. There is no burden of evidence. You're just wrong. You are guilty if she accuses you, and that's the end of it. Think about that stupid woman who went up and tried to derail Brett Kavanaugh. She had nothing even approaching a story. She didn't know where the house was, who was there, how she got there, how she got home. Nothing. She knew nothing. And they took her so seriously that they put her in front of the Congress. They took her, I believe it was the Senate, wasn't it? They took her in front of a Senate committee and let this crazy lady take over the national narrative for weeks. This insane woman. All right, if a man had done that to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, he would have gone to jail. He probably would have been ripped apart by the cult of Dionysus, and if you don't know what that is, look it up, because it is eerily familiar to what's going on these days. Eerily. My point being, I just read this weekend. I have another point apparently. The point wasn't the point, obviously. As men, we have to recognize that we are second-class citizens. We rank below definitely women. Most definitely, probably the whole LGBT. No, not most definitely. Behind the whole LGBTQ thing, that Jussie Smollett weirdo made one stupid accusation that he couldn't back up, and for a week he was taken seriously. And even now that it's been proven wrong, there are people who say, well, the sentiment was right. Maybe he was wrong, but that does happen. That's why we believed him. All right? And this guy's not even going to face any consequences. They declined to prosecute him. However, had it been the other way, had it been real, and they caught whoever had done it, if they had done it, they would have crucified them. They would have been in jail. It would have been years. They would have been all kinds of stupid stuff. Now I'm getting off of the point, because my point's not about the broader war on men. It's about this relationship with women. Women are legally more important than you. They have rights that men don't have, and you have to acknowledge that. I have seen it time and time again in my own life when I've had to go to court because of stupid decisions, where I had to go up against one of the mothers of my children, and yes, I know what that means about me when I have to say that. And I was guilty from the word go. You know, the best I could hope to do was mitigate some of the damage that you know, was ascribed to my personality and my character. There was no, like I said, no burden of proof, no standard of evidence. Women just had to make a claim, and it was taken at face value because it was assumed that I'm a man, I must be a predator. I must be a selfish reprobate out to destroy the virtuous women in my life. I've heard a lot of you make these same claims. We saw it again, though, when a woman could just break a contract. She could just break a contract. She could go to the court and say, I don't like what I did. And the court says, like, oh yeah, we don't think you should have done that either. And completely undid it and completely altered the course of this man's life. Admittedly, he made stupid decisions, but he thought he had covered his bases. You know, he thought he had this ironclad contract here. He thought the law was on his side. He did everything right in his mind, even though he did almost nothing right. But legally he was covered. And the law just said, yeah, I think you're on the hook for child support. You know what they're going to do now? If this goes through, they'll probably implant 5 to 6 of these embryos. There's a chance that multiple of them live and make it through to birth. And ideally, you know, as believers, we would want that to happen. But this man could have up to 5 or 6 children. That is very unlikely, but it has happened. Remember Octomom? That's what she did. He could have 5 or 6 children that he never. It's hard. It's so hard to defend this guy. But you see what I'm saying? This contract meant nothing. What does this mean for our lives? Oh, man, be so careful about who you give your children to. Oh, man, be so careful about who you give your children to. If there's anything I can tell you from my life, it's this. You have to be so careful about the women you let into your life. They can destroy you. And this isn't a criticism of women. This is just a morally neutral side effect of their nature, their created nature. They can destroy you and not even think about it. It will never come back in their minds again. Most of them, not all of them. A woman is filming this right now, a woman I trust. Not a lot of those in this world. Yeah, that's all I got to say. I'm sorry, I was on a rant. This became very real to me twice this weekend, once through this story and something else that came up. But you know, you are not as legal. We're running out of light. You're not a woman. You're a man, and unless you claim to be a woman, you're not worth as much under the law as a woman is. And the contracts they sign with you and the promises they make to you are meaningless. You have to find a woman who has her head screwed on straight about who she is and why she fulfills her role. That's a much bigger video than this is all about. But if the only thing that's protecting you is a legal contract, you're screwed. That woman's got to have a moral foundation that is based on something much bigger than either one of you, or you should not trust her. Certainly not with your children, not with your wealth or your life or your livelihood or your well-being. There's good women out there, men, and there's a lot of marginal women who can be turned into good women. But you got to be careful. Men, we appreciate you. Thank you.